My name is Stella, and I'm in my 30s. I'm a widow, and right now I'm dealing with a problem. I just realized that $100 is missing. I checked my wallet over and over, searched my bag thoroughly, but I can't find it anywhere. This morning, I withdrew $11,000 for living expenses, so I know I'm not just forgetting. I sigh and hold my head, feeling frustrated. I live with my in-laws, and we support each other after the loss of my husband. 3 years ago, I became the chief mourner when my husband passed away from cancer. He was young, and we were planning to build a happy family with children, but his death was sudden. I loved him deeply. Even in his last moments, he tried to comfort me, saying, "Leave it to me." Though he was in pain, he still smiled. After he died, life felt empty, like I was just existing. My in-laws shared this pain. They were suffering too. At the funeral, my father-in-law quietly said, "Dying before one's parents, what a shameful thing," and bit his lip to hold back tears. We've been living together since then, like animals huddling together for warmth. My relationship with my in-laws is good. They even encouraged me to find new love, saying, "You're still young and cute. You can meet someone wonderful." I thanked them but told them that I still loved my husband. They said they'd support me even if I found someone new. My in-laws worry about me because I became a widow in my 20s. When I mentioned that I wanted to start working, they encouraged me, saying, "You don't have to overdo it. We'll manage as a family." But after losing my husband, our financial situation became unstable. We hadn't planned for him to get cancer at such a young age, and our savings, meant for building a house, quickly ran out. Now I rely on a survivor's pension and help from my in-laws, but I can't be satisfied with this situation. So I decided to start a part-time job. A few months after I started working, I noticed money was missing. At first, it was just a few $10 bills, but then it became $100 and eventually $200. Since there are only 3 people in the house, me and my in-laws, and my father-in-law is away at work during the day, I started to suspect my mother-in-law. But she's always so kind, saying things like, "I'll make dinner tonight so you can relax." I didn't want to believe she could do something like this. One day, I left my purse with $70 and set up my smartphone to record. The video clearly showed my mother-in-law taking the money without hesitation. I realized she might be stealing to support herself. She often tries to cheer me up, suggesting we go shopping or try popular desserts, but I can tell she's forcing herself to be happy, likely because she's still grieving her son. I understand her grief all too well, so I can't bring myself to blame her. I'm still in my 20s and have some energy left, so I decided to work more until my mother-in-law can find peace. That's why I started working late at night, where the pay is better. It's mid-November now, and the nights are getting colder. Soon, it will be a year since my husband passed away. I remember how he suddenly suggested, "Shall we go to the store to buy ice cream?" in the middle of the night. We walked down the quiet street, holding hands. His hand was large, thick, and very warm. Even though he had become quite thin before he passed away, the warmth of his hand never changed. Now I put my cold hands in my pockets and hurried to the store. The store where I work at night is usually quiet but still busy, even though only 2 people work there. As I was checking expiration dates on products, I sensed someone approaching. "Ah, the register, sorry." I turned around quickly, and to my surprise, my father-in-law was standing there, dressed in a suit despite the late hour. "You've been working part-time?" he asked. He had assumed my frequent nighttime outings were because I had a new lover, but that wasn't the case. It seems he misunderstood, thinking I was keeping a new relationship secret. He had dressed up and followed me, intending to meet the person he thought was making me happy and ask them, "Please make Stella happy." When I replied, "I still love him," my father-in-law murmured with a voice full of both joy and sadness, "I see." Then he asked what I expected. "Why are you working at night? Aren't you making enough money? You work during the day too." When I hesitated, he pressed further with more questions. I had kept my late-night job a secret from both of my in-laws because I didn't want to explain the situation with my mother-in-law. I had been sneaking out quietly while they slept, but I was surprised he had found out. Realizing I couldn't keep it hidden any longer, I pulled out my smartphone and showed him the video. I confessed everything, when the thefts started, how often they happened, and how much money had been stolen. I also mentioned that it might be due to the loneliness of losing their son. My father-in-law listened silently and then said with difficulty, "I've caused trouble." I replied, "It's okay, we're all suffering." He then said, with tears running down his cheeks, "We were blessed with such a wonderful daughter-in-law, and to almost lose her so quickly is truly, truly foolish." I couldn't hold back my own tears, even though I was at work. "Father, the coffee here is really good. Would you like to try some? I'm about to take a break. Would you join me?" I invited him. "Yes, that would be nice," he replied, turning away to wipe his eyes with his sleeve. We sat together near the bicycle parking area of the store, drinking coffee. The sky was clear, and the night was beautiful, with the full moon lighting up the darkness. "Don't you think the winter night sky is the most beautiful?" I asked. "Exactly," he said. "That's why we should go camping during the winter break, to a place where the stars are beautiful." It was a plan my husband would have made. "All right, I'll look up some places," I said. I replied that it was a plan we both would have liked, but I was sure my husband was enjoying the most beautiful starry sky from the best seat in heaven. With that thought, I looked up at the sky. Suddenly, my father-in-law gasped in surprise. I followed his gaze and saw my mother-in-law walking happily with a man I didn't know. They were walking arm in arm. "Quiet, let's go back to the store right away," I said, feeling nervous. It was clear we saw something we shouldn't have. My heart started pounding, not just a little, but a lot. The way they were together made it seem like there was something inappropriate going on. My father-in-law seemed to sense it too. His face looked serious. They weren't just arm in arm. They looked like they were about to kiss, walking very close together. He sighed and said, "It seems you weren't the only one going out late at night." My wife couldn't sleep either, thinking of our son, and she was also going out at night. I thought she couldn't escape the sadness, so I let her be. He paused, trying to find the right words. "But maybe it's a misunderstanding. Maybe she just ran into someone she knew while walking." I felt disappointed in my weak attempt to make it sound okay, but my father-in-law smiled and thanked me anyway. The air between us felt even more uncomfortable, and the cheerful music playing in the store made it worse. My father-in-law suddenly muttered, "I see, that's what it is." He nodded like he understood something, but I was still confused. I looked at him, full of questions. He said, "Stella, let's keep what happened tonight between us and not tell my wife. I'll handle this. And if my wife takes your money again, please let me know secretly." "Yes, I understand," I replied. "Don't worry about anything, Stella," he said firmly, gently patting my head. A few weeks later, on a Sunday after lunch, he said, "There's something I need to discuss. Stella, please join us as a witness." My mother-in-law asked, "What's wrong? Why the serious face?" My father-in-law waited for us to sit down, then took several papers out of a brown envelope and spread them on the table. My mother-in-law quickly grabbed one of the sheets. It was a large photo of her and a man entering the hotel. My father-in-law had hired a detective to find out what my mother-in-law was doing. "Are you still seeing him?" he asked. My mother-in-law just stared back at him angrily without answering. Curiosity got the best of me, so I asked, "What do you mean by still?" My father-in-law was silent for a while before he quietly started telling the story. "Actually, this was before our son was born," he began. "Right after marrying my father-in-law, my mother-in-law gave in to temptation from outside the marriage. The man we saw at the store was the same one involved back then. My mother-in-law and that man were high school classmates, and they reconnected at a reunion. They had been close in high school and admitted to each other that they had feelings for each other back then. Although my mother-in-law was already married, he was single and attractive. According to my father-in-law, she thought it was the perfect chance to leave her marriage since they didn't have children yet. However, the problem was that the man didn't have a promising future. He was good-looking and dreamed of becoming a famous actor, even starting his own theater group. But there were hardly any members, and most of the performances were just him alone. Torn between reality and dreams, my mother-in-law chose the stable life my father-in-law could offer over the uncertain dreams of her former classmate, giving up the idea of running away with him. But in the end, my mother-in-law couldn't make a choice and lived a double life between my father-in-law and that man. At that time, I was so busy with work that I didn't notice what was happening at home. my father-in-law said with a sad look, giving my mother-in-law a cold stare. He found out about the affair when there was a chance she could be pregnant. Even when she might have been pregnant, she didn't seem truly happy. I started to get suspicious and looked into it, discovering that she had been involved with that man. But my mother-in-law desperately insisted. Our son is really yours truly. She had made the same plea in the past, promising to break up with the man immediately and never see him again. She wanted to build a life with my father-in-law, and he believed her. He thought it was just a brief affair, but it was much more serious. When we saw them at the store, it was clear why my father-in-law's expression became so stern. And to think you've continued this relationship all along, it's truly disgraceful, he said. No, that's not true, she replied, but their relationship looked like they had been together for years. My father-in-law slammed the report on the table, and the undeniable evidence was clear. My mother-in-law tried to argue, but she looked downcast. It's true. I'm not lying. I hadn't been in touch with him at all. I didn't even know of his contact information. Then why were you together? My father-in-law pressed. He came to our son's funeral. My mother-in-law answered. What? My father-in-law exclaimed in surprise. Maybe you called him because he's the real father. That's not true. Our child is really yours. He just came for the funeral, she insisted. I see. Really, I was just lonely after our son died. I just wanted to see him again, but I didn't know his contact, so I looked up his stage name on the internet and found his theater group's email address. So you started seeing each other again? Because I couldn't help it. I was tormented by our son's memory. I wanted to be free too, she said, turning to me. Stella, you understand, don't you? My mother-in-law pleaded, but I was speechless, frozen in shock as I learned about my in-law's past. How much had my husband known about all of this? Thinking of him made my heart ache as my mother-in-law kept trying to defend herself. My father-in-law just shook his head in disbelief. No matter how believable your story sounds, I won't fall for it anymore. I won't be deceived again, he declared. What do you mean by deceiving? I'm telling the truth, my mother-in-law protested. Just lonely because our son is gone. Is that the real reason? My father-in-law questioned. It's true. Why would you say that? She retorted loudly, but my father-in-law calmly looked her in the eyes. Stella, the money stolen from your purse went to that man's drinking and gambling, he said quietly. What? I was shocked. Have you been giving Stella's earnings to this man? He asked. My mother-in-law didn't answer, but her expression said it all. It was true. Stella knew you were taking the money, but despite that, she thought you were suffering and showed compassion. Now apologize to Stella, my father-in-law demanded. I'm sorry, my mother-in-law said, apologizing. Emotions overwhelmed me, and I couldn't stop crying, though I didn't even know what kind of tears they were. Everything felt out of control. And you promised at the bar you frequent that you'd marry him after I died? Laughing about it. You even said you'd build a house with my retirement fund. My father-in-law added, that must be a joke, right? My mother-in-law responded, I can't believe a parent who has lost a child would joke about a family member's death. My father-in-law said, raising his voice. There had been rumors that my mother-in-law wished for my father-in-law's death. It was unbelievable. Unable to bear it any longer, I rushed out of the living room and curled up in the hallway, wiping away my unending tears. From beyond the hallway, I could hear my father-in-law's anguished voice through the living room door. You must have been happy to see him after our son died. I don't want to see your face anymore. Leave right now, he yelled. Later, they divorced. I don't know if my mother-in-law is with that man anymore. It no longer concerns me. My father-in-law returned the money my mother-in-law had taken from me and said, Don't worry, I'll also get compensation from her. But the amount I lost wasn't much. It's compensation for you, Stella. Don't worry about it. Legally, you are my daughter, he said with a laugh. His kindness always warmed my heart. Can I stay here until I find new love? I asked. Of course, my father-in-law responded with a big smile. I wondered what my husband would think about this decision, and the question suddenly crossed my mind. Hey Stella, can I ask you one thing? Don't you ever think there's no blood relation between me and my son? What do you actually think? My father-in-law asked hesitantly. This must have been weighing on his mind for a long time. His face was tense with anxiety. He had raised his son alone, unable to confide in anyone. I looked him straight in the eye and answered lightly, Oh, Was that what you were worried about? That was it, he replied. I couldn't help but laugh. Of course you are father and son. Remember what you said at the store, Stella, you don't have to worry about anything. Leave it all to me. His way of speaking and his actions are so much like yours, it's as if he was possessed by you. No doubt you are a real father and son, I guarantee it. Hearing those words, my father-in-law started to cry, his emotions finally collapsing. Thank you, really thank you, he said, and I gently rubbed his back. Father, thank you for raising him so wonderfully. At that moment my father-in-law took my hand and squeezed it tightly. His hand was as warm as his son's.